Hi all, I want to start off with a big apology for all the dead links last week. Moodle apparently formatted my links from last semester in a way that did not allow them to transfer into my new course. I should have double checked them better and will try to make sure that that doesn't happen again. I know how frustrating that is for students. We did great in looking at the Salem witchcraft trials last week. I know that taking sides is challenging, but we had a great debate on which historians used evidence better. Keep this up. Remember, if you are stuck with taking sides, see the discussion starters that I have provided for you. They will help you to critique a historian. Students often find it hard to critique people who are experts in the field, yet this is something we must all strive to do. It helps us to become informed citizens and critically think about the information handed to us. Anyone can look at evidence and see if the puzzle our historian has put together makes sense. Plus, I hope that you are noticing in history not many scholars agree. We can weigh in on who has the better argument, evidence, and questions. I liked last week's VoiceThread primary source discussion because it brought yet another argument to the table. Was there an economic or geographical answer when looking at the Salem witch hunt? There is no easy answer and many probable theories. What I found interesting on this subject is that historians are now starting to look at the event from the colonial women's point of view. We are starting to write women's experience into the national narrative. This week, you will complete your first blog. Your blogging assignment is mandatory and is an easy way to earn 5 points. Blogging lets me know how you are doing in this course, gives you a chance to reflect on the course and see some of your classmates' perspectives. Remember that the blog is visible to everyone in our class. You should share information that is relevant to the course and use your best academic writing skills. This isn't the blog. Yikes. This is the blog. This week we'll be reading After the Fact and looking at the Declaration of Independence. I will work on getting you feedback on your topic selections. Remember that you should work on your project all semester long. Don't forget to check our book lecture for other business items this week, and always feel free to join me in virtual office hours on Sunday nights from 9 to 10 p.m. Have a great week!